Hi everybody, welcome to our Facebook live stream of our panel discussion. This was supposed to take place at our Street Doctors National Conference today, but to protect the health of our volunteer community, we've very sadly had to cancel it. But we don't want to be defeated by the coronavirus, so here we are virtually, and we've arranged this event really fast so that we can still have this really important panel discussion. So thank you very much, Olu, John, Queenie, Chantal, Simeon, for being here today. So I'd like to start by just asking each of you to just talk a little bit about yourselves so our audience know a bit about you. Olu.
Yeah, so I'm Olu, I'm from South London. I'm currently a young leader within the movement called Nothing Without Young People. My past experience has been me being involved in gangs within Brixton and going in and out of the prison system. And after X amount of years, I then went through my transition period, worked within a couple industries, and now I'm devoting my time to helping young people coming from the same experience like myself.
Great, thank you. John.
Hi, my name's John Chatterje. I'm a doctor. I'm a consultant in prehospital emergency medicine at Barts Health with London's Air Ambulance. And so for the past 7 or 8 years, I've been working in London with the Air Ambulance, treating the most critically injured patients in London. And unfortunately, our most common call out for the last few years has been shootings and stabbings. So I get to see the unfortunate end of what we're talking about today.
Thank you. Queenie.
My name is Queenie and I am the marketing lead at Legacy Youth Zone. I also work as a peer outreach worker for the Greater London Authority, which is the Mayor of London's office. Around my time, I love to devote time working with young people who have had similar experiences, not just with myself, but people around, and just raising aspirations for young people.
Thank you. Chantal.
Hi, I'm Chantal. I'm a Street Doctors volunteer and a medical student up in Sheffield at the moment. Last summer I worked for Street Doctors as our expansion officer, so we did a project looking at areas in the UK where there are high rates of violence and what the Street Doctors' impact is in those areas, and I'm currently Sheffield team leader.
Yeah, my name's Simeon. I'm a musician, I'm a community activist, I do a lot of public speaking. I run a media company called Dax TV, but we also do a lot of work within schools and within the community to try and change the way young people think and to change the culture, urban culture of youth violence, knife crime, gangsterism and all the rest of it.
We have asked all our panellists to talk for a short amount of time about a preset question. That question is, many young people affected by violence lack hope and opportunities to break free from its effects. How can we work together to remedy this? So I'm going to ask each of the panellists to go through their responses to that question, then I'm going to move on to the next one, and then at the end I will ask questions that I might have or any of you might have who are tuning into this. So who am I going to pick on first? I might go from that end of the table. So Simeon, could you give us your response to that question?
Okay, so I want to look at the problem first. So we need to understand what the actual problem is. And for me and for the research that I've done and what I've studied, the causes of the problem is we have very poor environmental factors. There are very poor environmental factors that our young people are growing up within that is creating vulnerability. So many of our young people are growing up vulnerable because of poor environmental factors such as low income families, broken families, poverty, lack of opportunities, institutionalized racism, which may be one of the biggest ones, And those are the kind of things that are creating breakdowns within the family, breakdowns within the community, and creating vulnerable young people. Now, once we've created those vulnerable young people, what happens is they get fed with bad information, negative information, urban culture, gangster culture, consumerism, and where money is God. So we've got that culture, a lack of care for life, where it's very easy for me to go and pick up a knife and go and stab you. So we have information that is creating minds that have those belief systems, because they are vulnerable, been made vulnerable and easily susceptible to this, to take on these negative lifestyles. So that's what the issues is. So for me to deal with the issue, it has to be dealt with on many levels first and foremost, because the young people are getting this information from everywhere. I do a lot of work within schools, and do workshops and mentoring, one-to-one intense mentoring, and I've even found that work a bit disheartening to do right now, because we're fighting a very, very powerful culture. So as much time they're spending with me, when they leave me, they go into a culture that's telling them to rob, kill, shoot, and all the rest of it. So that is one of the biggest problems. So to deal with this thing, in terms of the authorities, I think the authorities need to give people on the ground the resources. We need more manpower. We also need a change within the environment, just even making the environment look better changes the way young people will think and act and react to their environment. Changing the way the young people are educated is a very important thing that needs to happen, because I work in a lot of schools, and some of the schools that I go to and I work in, they look like prisons. They have prison corridors. They have a prison servery. So what kind of young people are we shaping as a society? So for me, the authorities and the powers that be need to give the community and the people on the ground the support and the resources to actually do the job properly and make it work. As a community and as a people and a society in general, we need to change a culture. Like, we're fighting a culture. The people on the ground, the little small pockets of us, we're fighting a very big culture that's telling young people to live this way, to live in fear, to carry a knife, to sell drugs, to shoot people, to not care about your brother, to not care about your elders. So we need to deal with that as a people, as a community, because for me that's kind of like a big problem right now. There's a lot of good work happening, and I would say the communities are coming together, even with the authorities, through strategic partnerships and things like that. But there's small pockets. It's very small pockets. It has to happen. Everyone has to be involved in this. Everyone needs to be a part of it. The lifestyle that is being driven and being advertised, we can't afford to entertain it no more, and that doesn't matter what level you're at. If you just, it's just entertainment. I was talking to the young lady next to me earlier on about an event that I went to at One Extra and in Birmingham, and loads of stuff happened. Someone got stabbed and all the rest of it, and there was loads of complaints. Why are these people doing this? Why are they like this? And my thing was this: I felt it a bit cheeky, because why in the event they played songs like Gun Lean and they're playing Shoot 'Em Up and this and that throughout the whole event, and then the reality of it happens now. When the reality of it happens, it's not entertainment no more. And why is this happening? So we have to start thinking on a societal level. No one is excluded from this, about the role that you're playing. Because if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I'll leave it there.
Fantastic, thank you so much. I've got a few questions, but I'm leaving them all to the end. Great, thank you. Chantal.
Yeah, well, when I first saw the question, there were two main things that I wanted to bring up, and actually I think a lot of it echoes what you've already said. Last couple of years I've been doing a lot of research around the risk factors for youth violence, and we know that they're like adverse childhood experiences. We know that we're excluding young people from schools. We know that violence in terms of this on an individual level, or we see it in the community, or like you said, it's normalised in our community. And one of the biggest things when I interviewed people, a lot of it is about the social inequality, and that's poverty, but it's discrimination on every level. So class discrimination, racial discrimination, they're huge driving factors that actually we need to wake up as a society and realise again that we have a big role to play in this. one of the people that I interviewed said that young people are not blind to their reality, and we need to wake up and listen to that, because we're making young people grow up in environments that are shaping them, or not necessarily shaping them, but we're not giving them the option to succeed, have opportunities, and the opportunities that one young person has in comparison to another young person who grows up with all the resources around them. They've got a good education, they've got support from home environments, from school environments, from, these are completely different environments, and it's not fair. And that I think a lot of the time as well, the current system, although we're starting to see that change, we're seeing a public health model that is starting to be embodied, but there is still a lot of blame on the individual, on that individual young person. Say, for example, we're criminalising a lot of our young people. We're, carrying out stop and searches. Although the number of stop and searches are decreasing, there's so much discrimination in that already. And we're actually, this length of a sentence that the young person's getting is increasing. So in effect, we're putting these young people into a prison pipeline, which we know increases their chances of reoffending in the future. It's a system that doesn't work, but it's still been embodied by the government, and not enough is done in the wider picture. So I think, in effect, we need to stop these barriers and actually create more opportunities. Like I say, by not criminalising our young people, but also look at the wider picture. So we've talked about, there's been in last 10 years of austerity, we've seen effects on the NHS, on schools, on youth clubs, and this has a massive impact, which we actually need to wake up and see that the real life effect, like you're saying, that is happening. I think in particularly, I'll go on to talk about, because I don't want to run out of time. As a Street Doctors volunteer, I think as well, for all those other volunteers that are listening, I often underestimate the kind of power that we actually have, the platform that we have as well to speak about our experiences with young people. See how, when you leave a session and you see that you've given that young person a little bit of hope, or you've educated them about something that they can do to be part of the solution, actually be proud of that, and then go and spread the word, be part of the societal change that isn't advocating this discriminatory behaviour across our society. We have a big platform to use, and we can use that on a social level now, but also if healthcare professionals, we can go and embody that in future policy making. I think, we're very fortunate that we have this space, but also we have, in a way, a responsibility to use that, and it can be used to a greater effect than certainly I realised in the first place, I think.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Great, thank you. Queenie.
Okay, so first of all, two major points for me that stand out is the fact that we need to put young people first, as well as we need to, and the names in the hat, work together, in the sense that no man is an island, but a lot of young people feel like an island because they feel like they're isolated, and we need to ensure that we're working together to ensure that they don't feel this way. A lot of young people that we work with at Legacy Youth Zone, they come from various backgrounds, and they come to this new space, this new environment where they feel free to move around and free to be themselves, but actually what tends to happen is they take on this new identity that's not theirs, because they're trying to fit in, and they're trying to put this mask over their face to cover up what's really going on, and actually they end up getting involved in certain behaviours, or what happens on the street, or what people are talking about them, and they have to put up this certain front so that they're not perceived to be this way, and which can either lead down a bad path or could fortunately go into a positive way. And so it's about creating this culture where young people don't feel that way, by embracing them for who they are and finding out what makes them them, and keeping out what all the bad stuff is going on outside, by keep pointing fingers towards them and making them feel like they're this entity that doesn't fit in, that doesn't belong, and that's causing chaos in society. Because everything we hear when we switch on the telly is young person this and young person's done that, and it's like when they keep seeing these things on TV, on social media, they actually embrace what it is, and you are what you say you are what you hear, and then you believe these things, and young people believe it. And that's what I believe is causing them to then choose these maybe certain types of groups that make them feel a certain way, but actually they're engaging in activities that are not correct, but they feel like it's okay to do it because they're happy, they feel okay, they feel they're part of a group, they're part of a gang, they're part of a culture, and no one actually questions what's actually going on inside. They just are easily quick to put them in the corner and say, okay, well, they're already condemned, let's move on to the next set of young people that we can help. But actually, it's how do we work with these young people that are already in these situations and already in these environments and change the situation for the better. A lot of young people that I've come across, they haven't seen the four walls of their environment, as in their local community. They don't go out, and so they haven't been exposed to what actually is out there in the world, and so they feel like their life begins and ends in that particular community. And so whatever is right, whatever is wrong, they'll just get involved with it because that, to them, that's where they see themselves, and that's where it all kind of limits. And if we're engaging young people in actually seeing way beyond what meets the eye, actually a lot of young people are fascinated to see what goes on in this world, and it raises their aspirations to actually become someone in life, or they see people in positions where they want to be. I know we had this conversation earlier, and actually they want to be someone in life, but they don't see themselves getting there, and so they end up associating in these crowds, and that's both young men and young women. And instead of kind of like isolating the genders, it's kind of like, let's just embrace young people for who they are and where they've come from, and fix the solution by putting them first and finding out what do they want out of this life, and where do they want to see themselves but don't currently see themselves, and how can we work around this to make a change, and especially kind of like building their self-esteem, building their confidence, building their skills, working on their ethics, and kind of creating them to be this person that they've only dreamt of, and not limiting them to what is going to be like you go through education and then you get a job and then that's it, and that's fine, but it's kind of like they feel like, well, I'm not smart at school, so I probably won't get a job, it'll just end here, so this is where I'm going to live my life, and I don't have to try hard because there's no point. And that's what is the culture right now with young people. There's this can't be asked attitude, and you hear young people using that term CBA because they tell themselves, and you hear it in the chatter quite recently. I mean, non-violent related, I was in a conversation with some young people, and it's sort of saying, oh, I'm ugly, or oh, I'm not good looking, or oh, I'm not smart enough, and then everyone's all like hyping each other up and going, yeah, I feel you, I get that, I hear that, but it's kind of like, okay, where do we step in as a community and be like, actually, we understand that you've identified this about yourself, how can we change that? Instead, we kind of leave it and go, okay, well, they think this about themselves, what more can we do? So we need to come together as a community, local authorities, schools, hospitals, teachers, whatever background it may be, and work as a community. As you know, the old adage says, it takes a village. It's true. And we need to build our young people to be who they only dream for them to be.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I feel like I should clap you.
I know, I was feeling like that for you guys as well.
So I hope you're all clapping by the laptop. Okay, John.
So, first of all, I have to give the proviso that these are my own views. I'm not representing my employers or my organisations in terms of the views I give today. Some incredibly passionate and sensible things said by the panellists already. I think when I see young people, I'm seeing them at one end of their journey, and what I find at these horrific incidents is that I generally have an incredibly scared young person in the back of the ambulance. They might say and do things outside, but once they're inside, everybody's a human being, and they are absolutely terrified about what has happened. And I think you see this, and the ripple, not just of the deaths, but of the violence, goes through the whole community. And that rippling through the whole community reaches all aspects of it. And so to look at the question that have been asked today is actually to look at the other end of that, not the end that I end up seeing regularly. So I've had the privilege of being able to go to some pupil referral units, and I've been to prisons as well, and I've met a whole spectrum of society. And I think to combat this is about going right back to the start, and echoing some of the things that have been said here. Children are not born on a level playing field in this country. I know sort of, some high profile people have been sort of criticised for saying that, but I don't see that, because I think you live in the world that you live in, and you see the aspirations and the walls of the world that you live in as being what you feel that you can achieve or can't achieve. And as you were saying, some of the structural things, if, my school was a beautiful old red brick school, hundreds of years old, with beautiful playing fields. So I could imagine myself being a cricketer, a footballer, an academic, all these things. But if my school was looked like a prison and had no library or anything like that, I couldn't see those things. And seeing people that look like me and sound like me doing things that I would aspire to do, that makes a massive difference. And I think as a society, we have come a huge way from when my parents first came to this country in the 60s to now. I think the opportunities and race equality have come along a huge way, but we still have a long way to go. And that is about opening up the opportunities for young people so that they all feel they can achieve, they can all see a bit of them in all of the people they admire and all of the people they want to be in society. We were talking about this before, that when you go to schools, when you talk to people, people don't always have the bravery to put their hands up in front of their friends to ask a question, because they don't want to have the mickey taken out of them. And actually, a lot of people then come to you afterwards to then ask you about opportunities. And so I've had people say to me, well, you talk to me about, life and medicine, but I can't do that because I'm not good enough for that. And that's absolute rubbish. I know that because, I know doctors that have come from all different sorts of backgrounds, but it's about what people think is possible. And I think there's an element of society that will always do well, regardless of where they're born or who they are. And those people are special, and that's fantastic. They don't need our help. But there's a big chunk of society that will be pushed either up or down by the people around them and the society around them. And I think I was one of these people, because I was very lucky to have amazing parents and amazing friends at school. And I was in a gang. But my gang all went to university. My gang all went to good universities. My gang all hang out at ridiculously expensive bars with stupidly priced cocktails and wine. But that's a gang. But I want to be in the gang. I don't want to be the person outside the gang. I don't want to be the person that doesn't get invited to these things or doesn't fit in because I don't know the right colour wine to order with this particular dish. So you want to be in that gang. But that's my gang. My gang makes me in a really privileged part of society. But equally, if your gang is saying you don't have the opportunity to rise beyond this, and your gang is saying you don't have the opportunity to do this, you can never, take an education or take an opportunity to do something else, that's the problem. And to change that is about changing the whole society. And that starts with a level playing field, starts with the people within the community and without the community. So I know and work with a lot of police officers in London, and the vast majority of them, I have to say, are absolutely brilliant individuals. And it's about empowering these people and giving them the funding and the space to do the work they want, the community leaders, the schools, the teachers, the whole of community, and about reshaping the world that we live in so that we actually value our people. And if you feel valued, you can do a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are going to have a round of applause after Ollie, because I feel like we've got to. Ollie.
Thank you. I think one of the main factors that Simeon mentioned was poverty, which I'm truly behind, and I truly feel that is a major issue. Myself, growing up, going to school, I did well at school, but by the time I got into year 9, that's where the poverty issues that my family was going through became much more of a major issue, and I decided to take matters into my own hands, or should I say, opportunities for my elders were given to me, being employed, being put in the county line up in Norwich with X amount of drugs and being told to sell it in order to earn an income. For me, this just made sense at the time, you know, rather than focusing in history or art or wherever it may be. Being able to sort out my problems straight away was much more helpful. And during that time within school, before it got to that point, you know, selling your donuts, your crisps, all that things that many young people have done, having these stuff confiscated continuously, it didn't help at all. You know, teachers saw how I was being easily distracted for other reasons, but I was just constantly being told, you know, what you've done is wrong, detention, so on and so forth, but problems were still going on the outside, which led me to go down this county line route, get involved in gangs, and being able to sort out my issues temporarily at that moment of time. Once going in and out of prison for violent and drug offences, I went in for 3 times, and 2 out of the 3, I was literally left to go back into the community with nothing again. So being told to see my probation worker, being banned from 3 of the main boroughs within South London, and not given any help at all whatsoever, it was quite obvious that I would continue to go down the same path again and again and again. Until my 3rd time, I decided to take matters into my own hands and actually sort my life out and do what I needed to do. However, that is not the typical story for every person coming from that pathway. For me, it was a different story. I had a different path. Now, once making that change, I found that the local authorities sort of automatically pushed many ex-offenders into this route of becoming a construction worker or probably becoming a personal trainer, something physical where you may not need to use your brain as such. But for me, I just kind of felt, well, I want to make money, I want to have a good income behind me, start a business. Why is it that this same narrative is being pushed amongst all of us? Hence, I went into fashion thanks to a charity that's now closed, and was able to do the things that I wanted to do. But along that journey, you know, and coming up to the last, let's say, up to 2018, there was this constant theme where many people with lived experiences were being asked to attend City Hall, wherever, to talk about their experiences, and at the end of it, they would receive a pat on their back, you know, well done, you've told us your story, thank you so much. And this young person is being told, you know, it's so great that you've changed, thank you so much, thank you for sharing your story. But once this young person goes back into the community, after a couple of weeks and realizing that you're still on benefits, you know, your family's still not in the best position financially, someone calls your phone and says, do you want to do this criminal act to make money? After a while, you're gonna go and do it again because you're still not receiving what everybody should have within this country at the end of the day. So with myself, I'm someone that truly believes the people with the lived experiences need to be a part of actually creating the solutions, this actual co-production. Many people mention co-production, but it's not actually practiced properly. You know, ideas are brought forward, trustees, other people sort of make an agreement, and at the last bit, we gather these young people to basically sort of nod their head and say, yeah, this is a good idea, and then, you know, we create a new charity or whatever it is, you know. But what about us actually bringing in these young people, co-shaping these solutions that we want to now put forward. How about we actually pay these young people as consultants? We're very quick to get professors from many different universities who do not have the direct experience. But then when we bring in these young people that know what's going on, understand the politics within their areas in London, Birmingham, or whatever it is, again, they get a pat on the back where we have the direct sources right next to us. So for me, I feel this narrative that's always painted about young people being hard to reach, I actually feel that is the system that is hard to reach itself. And these people with the lived experiences need to be respected and also financially paid to co-create to make change.
Can we clap that?
We are now. That was absolutely brilliant. There is so much in there that all of you have said. I hope people please do send in your questions. I think something that's really come up for me is a couple of things. So we're all talking about, or you are all talking about, community empowerment, communities empowering themselves, and it makes me think, what is society, who is society, and who's in control, and why can't this happen? There's things that are stopping this happening, because if we all say, right, the solutions are in the community's hands, the solutions are in, young people's lived experience, the solutions are there, why can't we do it? And that's where we get back to the system. And what is the system? I mean, we're going to get into really esoteric territory here, but everything that every single one of you have said is so right, but it's just not happening enough. How can we take power? And what is it we're taking power from? And the other question, which I think you've all talked about it, but Simeon really talked about it a lot, is about young people getting negative information. And what I thought was, who is giving them that negative information? Where's it coming from? Which may actually be connected to the question of who's in control here and why can't we change things. So I know they're very big questions, but just to get us started, please, anybody got any thoughts?
Can I?
Simeon.
So for the first part of the question, in terms of looking at why we can't do this as a community and why is it not happening? From what I see in Birmingham, it's because although there is a community, there is no actual community. So there is no community structure, there is no community system. How do we operate as a community? How do we work together? What is our agenda? What are we striving for as a community? There is none of that, and until we get that, it's going to be. It's like we're looking for the authorities, the government, we're still like help us when really we're supposed to be doing it ourselves. And I would say that we do need the resources to do that, but at the moment, it goes back to the proper community structures. If for us the resources are out there and we can attain those resources, but if we don't have the proper structures and the systems in place as a community in general, it's not going to happen. And what happens is, so loads of money will come into the community, and then it will get broken up into little pieces for the community organisations to do little bits of work, which is not really making a proper impact. It's just to say, yeah, we've done a bit of this, we've done a bit of that, when really the community should be coming together to say, okay, then there's a pot here, this is how it's going to be spent to create this service, and it's going to be, rather than here's 20 grand here, here's 30 grand, and really nobody wants to speak to each other, nobody really wants to work together because they're fighting over the same pot of money. So in terms of the structures in the community, that's what I believe we need. There's the second part where we're looking at the culture
Yeah,
So
who's feeding the negative? You talked about, you talked really clearly about a Radio 1 Extra event in Birmingham where there's the music and the games they're playing, all that is all really negative. But who's creating that negative?
I call them cultural gatekeepers.
Right.
We're talking about the mainstream media, the people running the big YouTube channels that all the young people are watching, the people that making mainstream films, because all of this is mental programming. Yeah. This is what we have to look at it as. We have to realize that all this is just mental programming. It's not entertainment, it's mental programming. So then we have DJs, radio DJs, musicians, because these are the people that are pushing and this is the driving force of the culture. So all those people that are involved in, for me, media and the arts, because that's a big part of shaping, that's a big tool for shaping the culture, if not the biggest tool. And that's how this is how ideas are introduced into the mainstream population, mainly through music and the arts, mainly. So for me, it's those big companies that are fueling the culture. They say we portray the culture for what it really is, urban culture for what it really is, and I think that's a bit disrespectful, because if all you see in urban culture is guns, gangs, and that's not what my culture is about anyway. So remove the urban. If you're talking about this is black culture, I find that very disrespectful. So that's a big part of it. And just to add to it, we have to realise like what this is, what the actual culture is. Now we've got a big thing in the UK where we've got many privatised jails. So we've got privatised prisons, and this is just an idea that I'm going to give you. So we've got many privatised prisons, and these are businesses, companies, legal businesses. They're not run by the government. So as a business, your main thing is, what's your number one goal? Making a profit. How do we make profit as a business? You have to have a marketing plan. Now for me, if you've got a privatized prison, what is your marketing plan? I'm going to sing this until it comes home, and I'm going to keep saying it. As a privatized jail, what's your marketing plan? For me, it would be urban culture. It would be Grime Daily. It would be SBTV. It would be BBC One Extra. Let's just be real. It would be the gangster music that they're telling the children to go and kill each other, sell drugs, go OT, which is what they call county lines. Now, county lines is something that's been around for years. The difference is, when I was young, it wasn't cool. You wouldn't want to be sent down there. It wasn't cool. Now it's cool. How is that being made cool? It's been made cool through urban culture now. The music, where they're talking about go in the trap house, go and sit in the trap house. So it's very easy to make these things cool through these mediums. So I would say to people, be very mindful, because we've got a privatized prison industry right now. And I believe urban culture, music and films is its marketing plan.
Anyone else want to comment on the negative information or the big picture? We've got quite a few questions coming in, so don't feel like you all have to respond. But anyone want to say anything about that my original question before we get on to ones from our audience?
In terms of your first question before the negative, what was it again?
The first question was about who is society, who's in control here. Why can't communities just sort themselves out when we all seem to have the solutions? I mean, here's 5 brilliant people with loads of really good solutions. Who's bearing down on this?
So I think as a whole culture, we're very used to working traditionally. And once we, try to say, it's time for innovation in order to come up with these solutions, it's very easy to say it without putting it into practice. When I look at many of the sort of huge funders, due to relationships and things that they feel that has been working, they constantly keep providing money to many of the same organizations year after year after year. But there's so many grassroots organizations or individuals like a John down a street down the road in Hackney, where young people will probably say, oh, John's really helpful. He takes us to football in the coach every Saturday. It allows us to sort of speak about current issues that's going on. He helps us out, so on and so forth. And this John may not know how to actually apply for funding at all. Same as many grassroots organisations that are doing it from the bottom of their heart. They don't have the skill to actually put in bid applications. So what I'm basically saying is we do have to follow where the money is coming from, and those that are providing the source of income for things to actually start, they have to change the ways how people actually apply for funding as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's get on to some of the questions. So first one, Millie from West London. Just a couple of weeks ago, a senior police officer was all over the media saying that a lack of male role models, absent fathers and bad parenting are key causes of youth violence. How helpful do you think these sort of statements are? I mean, maybe we could ask the three of you. Do you have any comments?
Yeah.
It's all male role models, it's all bad parenting, yeah.
You know, I hear that a lot actually. It's said a lot and you kind of throw the blame in that direction all the time. And yes, it could be true, maybe, you know, young men lack that. But also, if you know that and you're making that statement, how are you identifying that issue? You're just sort of saying it and putting these individuals in this category without actually like dealing with the situation. Are you holding forums with men in the community? Are you bringing them together? Are you sharing ideas, solutions? Are you connecting them with groups that can help them? Are you identifying whether there's a need or a struggle, and how are you infiltrating that? How are you putting yourself in these situations rather than just going and doing a press release and saying, oh yeah, the men are the issue or the parents are the issue? Okay, cool, fine, but how do you tackle this? This is what they're not doing. They just want to make them look this way to shift the blame elsewhere and not take responsibility that actually it's community effort and that organisations need to come together and help each other, because people come from different backgrounds. People, you know, young men and mothers, fathers, anybody, they all have their different lived experiences, and you can't just label them this way and say, okay, that's what it is, and it will be a continuous ripple effect and it will just continue to happen generation after generation. So they need to kind of back away from making it this big thing and go behind the scenes and tackle the issue by addressing it.
Any other comments before we get on to the next question?
One of the things I think, you know, we moved from when I was growing up to, you know, a proper news programme to 24-hour media to sound bites, and I think we live in a soundbite culture, and these sort of things are far too easy to take something. So you take something that's based in reality, that he's not saying, or she is not saying something that's completely untrue. These are symptoms of a broken society. These are symptoms of broken families and broken homes. But you're taking that, packaging it in a soundbite and flicking it out there with an incendiary on it, and that's wrong, because it's one part of a very complex problem, and to present the whole problem as something you can say in a quick soundbite that makes some people happy, that's wrong. But what he's saying is representative of a much bigger problem, and I think these things, you know, necessarily require deeper conversation and deeper looking at to get to the bottom of these things. And there isn't going to be a simple answer, and there isn't going to be an easy one solution fits all.
I think, well, I was just going to completely echo basically what you said. I think a lot when you speak to people, they say, you know, this is a massive generalisation, which you keep hearing from lots and lots of people. And yeah, to a part it might be true in some situations, but again, you need to strip that back and think, well, why can't that parent be that support in the first place, or why can't they be that role model? And then think of things again which are affecting that. So poverty, so are they working like 2 jobs a day trying to just uplift the family, and that's why they're not there. They aren't physically able to be there. One of the people I interviewed, she worked with in a Somalian community, and she said that the parents were the ones reaching out to them to actually say, like, we need your help here. Like, we understand that our young people are facing problems and they're getting involved in stuff which we don't want them to get involved with, but it's the parents in that situation that are reaching out and saying, we recognise this and we want your help, but they're not always the ones that are able to provide that support. And even if they are in the first place, there might be reasons why they aren't able to. So I think it's very easy just to point the blame at that, but you have to think about the bigger picture behind it.
Sorry, I was going to say, can I cut in? Because even though I agree with what everyone's saying, I have been on Facebook and made videos like attacking parents to say, look, but if I'm going to be honest, like I do feel parents are a very, very big part of the problem, and I see it through my work, and I just see it through my in my community in general. Now, we're living in a time where we can't allow our children to just do their own thing, which is what I hear a lot of parents saying, and I think we're misunderstanding what being a parent and raising a child is. A lot of time people think because you put food in your child's belly, you give them clothes and a roof over their head, you're raising a child. No. To raise a child, you have to be consciously trying to shape their character, consciously thinking about the person that you want them to become, while allowing them to become the person that they want to become at the same time. So although we need to look at the bigger issues, we're living in a time of responsibility, so we all have to take responsibility. There's too much parents out here that are not taking responsibility, and just a little thing about leaving your child's education to the school. You can't leave your child's education up to the school alone. You're supposed to be, and I know it's very hard, as it's even for single parents and things like that, but from a personal perspective, my children come over everything. There is nothing that will come before my children. So if I have to stop everything that I'm doing to ensure that they're moving and doing what needs to be done correctly, I will do that. So although I totally agree, and I would even say what most of the other panelists would say as well, in my frustration at times, I do get on the parents and say, what are you not doing? Because it's very hard. So just to throw in an A.
And I think it's so easy to say all the right things in the right way, but actually there's sometimes some difficult truths that we all have to address. Good. So we've got quite a few questions. I'm going to give you a couple of them. So this is from Jazz Flair. Thank you to all the panellists. The importance of representation has been touched upon. Do you feel the leadership of our youth charities are effectively representing the young people we wish to reach? If not, how can we improve it? And another kind of related question from one of our trustees, Sophie. What are the key things the charity-stroke organisations can do to reach those people with lived experience and engage them in co-production? So one of them is about leadership of charities, and is it representative charity or organisations that are doing stuff around youth violence? And the other one is, how can charities connect with people with lived experience in a meaningful way rather than a tokenistic way? So and there's a couple of others, but let's just start with those two. And obviously you don't all have to answer them. So anyone with burning thoughts on either?
I think for me, question one leads to question two.
Okay.
So if with question one, in terms of like leaders of charities, if there were those that have the professional and the lived experiences, being embraced and part of the sort of the leadership of these charities, then from there that would have a direct connection with the charities actually engaging with kids with the lived experiences and making them part of the co-production itself. Having workers that have these experiences already, when there are conversations with young people, it builds this middle ground automatically. So if I use an example, 2 weeks ago, a client of mine, I've been working with him for about 5-6 months now, and there is no, apart from his probation worker, because it's obligatory as he's come out of prison, there's no other professional that he works with other than me. He doesn't care about no one else. I met him the first day when he was released. From that day, he was like, I want you to work with me, and we've managed to create many different changes. And then what happened was there was a skills and employment agency that I tried to signpost him to through his probation worker, but he thought automatically that I would be leaving him. So when that call was made to him, he said, I'm not working with no one, I don't care. Then he went to his probation worker and complained and said, why is Olu leaving me? What did I do? I want him to help me continue with that change. After that, I spoke to him and I said, look, I will still be working with you. Allowed the professional and him to meet, then left the room. And then he was like, oh my gosh, that woman is so amazing. I can't wait to be working with her and getting my apprenticeships and so on and so forth. What I'm basically saying is you need those people that these kids can relate to build these bridges.
Yeah. Anyone else on charity leadership stroke meaningful lived experience?
I think it's slightly related, but not quite directly about the charities. I think, what the charities do, what people like you guys do is fantastic, but you take one 10-second Nike advert or one music. I'm not going to try because I know nothing about music. Popular artist to say one thing on a social media channel. The reach and the professional reach of advertising and the narrative that the media reach. If the charities and the youth leaders could get a hold of the narrative and shift it, that would you've basically got a massive weapon that you could use for good, but it's just focused on a different narrative.
They're not trying to give it to us. They're not trying to give it to us.
It's back to the media thing you said. It's back to that.
Yeah. Anyone?
Kind of. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go on.
Kind of related to what you're saying about the media. Someone I was speaking to, they were saying, how you can target Facebook adverts and seeing something online that continues to pop up. Why can't we use that in a positive way? So, if you're searching for, some kind of support, why is that not something which the council can tag and actually show you the opportunities that are available to you in your community?
Yeah.
There's things like that which we do actually have the technology available to us now to do that, but it's not being used. It's been used in the media for a certain narrative, whereas actually we could be pushing more people towards the opportunities and charities that are available.
Yeah, and can I just add, as a charity leader, I've run lots of charities over many years and campaigns and stuff. If you look at representation, it may be mixed lower down, but you look at boards of trustees, you look at the chief executives and the deputies. There is a massive lack of representation, lived experience. We do not reflect the people in who we are serving, and we have to do something about this. And I think it is about taking risks. It is, you look at somebody's CV and, have they been to university and have they had all these opportunities? Because that means they'll be better at what they do. And I think we all, as the people who are running the things, have really got a responsibility here.
Yeah, I was just going to add, in terms of leadership, a lot of organisations believe that they know best or better than the other, and as opposed to kind of coming together and bringing heads together to say, or to see sort of their strengths, how they can all sort of work together. They don't, and then it almost becomes like a competition. So you say you shut down youth centres, but then you open up a really big youth centre under a different canopy, and it's kind of like, oh well, I'm not going to send my kids there because we didn't get that benefit. But it's actually okay, fine. Certain things have happened and you recognise that, but how can we now work together for the young people's benefit? A youth worker that's worked with me when I was younger once said to me, youth work is not just a paycheck, it's a vocation. You're in that job or that organisation or that charity because I'm assuming you cared when you apply for that job, and quite frankly, if you don't care, then don't be there, because young people are counting on us to do the right thing on their behalf. And it's sort of that's where the balance kind of goes a bit wonky, and it's sort of, we need to highlight where our, like you said earlier, where our priorities lie.
Just to add on that, I call that the charity beef. The charity that actually closed down years ago that supported me, when that happened, there was another charity where a lot of the kids was sort of automatically just went towards their way, and for them a lot of people were cheering and saying, yes, now we're going to get a lot of the kids and there'll be more work and so on and so forth. So yeah, like there is a lot of this sort of politics and sort of ticking boxes and trying to get more money. So
yeah. And it, we as charities always think, well, we're the nice people and the private sector, they're the nasties. But we emulate a lot of things that the private sector do and behaviours that the private sector have as well. So
I just wanted to add
got two more questions, but
I just wanted to add quickly. I think the biggest issue to that is really institutionalized racism, because when you're looking at the leading the people at the top of most companies, it's going to be middle class European. When you have companies that are non-middle class and non-European, they don't have access to the same resources. Not even from banks. So not even they don't even have the same access to the resources from banks and things like that. Never mind within big charities that give out funding. So once you start to get to these high levels, it's institutionalized racism, and we're not talking about conscious racism. We're talking about the system of racism, the institutionally within the United Kingdom system and government. That has a very big impact on a lot of things with these issues. Why even okay, if you look at One Extra, I'm going to keep saying One Extra. I'm not picking on them.
Hello, One Extra.
I'm not picking on them. But if you look at One Extra,
no, please listen. One Extra.
One Extra is an urban channel. It's an urban channel. It was made from urban people. If you look at the execs, it's got a black exec now, but that's because the other one exec, he had problems with interviews and things like that. But I mean, at the top of that, it was middle class white guys that wear shirts that don't know nothing about the culture, don't know nothing about the issues around it. So like, we've got a big problem with institutionalized racism within the country, and that's why it's so hard for people with lived experience to attain those positions.
Okay. Two last questions from our Street Doctors volunteers. So Lara from Cardiff asks, can urban culture provide any solutions? So urban culture, we often talk about it as bad, but how can it provide positive solutions? The other question from Gus says amazing panel, which we all agree with. How can we encourage and empower young people to push further and aim for more leadership positions, to give more young people something greater to strive towards, instead of, like you were saying, Queenie, living in these kind of enclosed places where there's no, you don't have aspiration. So urban culture, what can it do? And how can we empower young people to kind of reach for the stars, considering there's a system that we've talked about that seems to be wanting to thwart a lot of this. So choose a question can we have each panel member answering one of them would be good, or you can answer both, but you have to make it into one answer. So Chantal, starting with you.
I think for the second question about how we can actually give young people more opportunities, I think what we kind of based on what we've already discussed, but what we need to think about is like actually giving them jobs. If they're young, youth unemployment is a big thing, and it's a factor that is driving young people into youth violence. So we need to think about that on a practical level, and also apprenticeships. Like these are things that are actually going to encourage people. It's how you get interested in something, how you get interested in a career. I think to an extent, for example, the stepwise programme that Street Doctors have got already, it's things like that which you're giving young people qualifications, and then they can go on and have further opportunities in the future. We just need to be practical and think about, actually, there is a lot that we can do and a lot that kind of is there, but make sure young people are aware of them and actually literally give them the incentive and the opportunity to do it.
John?
You said a lot about Radio 1 Extra. I listen to BBC Radio 4. Even I have heard of Stormzy. And I think, having someone from, an urban community, it's grime, is that the correct? Yeah, just checking. So, someone playing grime, I don't listen to grime, I don't listen to much music, but having someone like that on Radio 4 means that people who are not of this community see and listen to this guy and listen to what he has to say. And as far as I can tell, he's a very, very good speaker, and he raises issues, and he's really bright. And that gives people a positive role model. And actually that's something we as a community should do to elevate people, because it's not about the colour of your skin, it's not about whether you did PPE at Oxford or whether you just went to Hackney College. Not that I know Hackney College, I'm sure is very good, but it's about elevating these people and giving people positive role models. So I think there's a lot of stuff about doing the nubbins and the gritty groundwork and giving people an opportunity and a rung on the ladder. But what they actually need to see is that ladder reaching up somewhere that is somewhere really, really positive.
Yeah. Queenie?
I'd say representation and experience, in the sense that, we want to see ourselves at the top. We want to see someone that looks like us. And like we were saying before, like you walk into an organisation, a company, a business, Fortune 500, hospital, whatever it is, and if you see someone that looks like you or may have come from a background like yours, you'd be like, actually, okay, I can actually do this, and then you work towards it. Another one is kind of putting young people in the environment, put them on the spot. One thing that I haven't mentioned is in the past, like I was on a shadow board for the NSPCC, and going to these really important meetings, having to deal with all these papers, you're like, oh wow, like, I'm in the same room with people who head their own companies, people who, the CEO of the actual charity, as well as actually recently I was appointed to a board, and I'm 22 years old. You don't see many young people around that age or younger being in these kind of environments, actually inputting their knowledge and whatever they had to say to enforce change within that organisation and the community. And if we're giving young people these responsibilities, they can see that actually they can do it, as well as they can work hard and inspire others in their circles or their siblings, and it just becomes a chain reaction. So yeah, that's
Yeah. Simeon?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the culture, and I'm going to try and use, there's two quotes that I want to use. One is, I read it in a book, it says that the arts manifest the spirit of the age. Another one was from KRS-One, and he was in an interview, and he says, right now, the biggest influencer of culture is rap and urban music. Is the biggest influencer of culture around the whole world. I think it's very important to start actually understanding that this is what is actually happening. Ideas and beliefs and ways of thinking and living have been sent around the world and made globalized through media. And it's created this type of culture that we're seeing today. This type of culture wasn't always here. In the late 80s, in the early 80s, we had a very different culture. And if you check out the media and the music and the films that we had access to at those times, it was all about fight the power, KRS-One, Public Enemy, Bob Marley. There was a different message. We saw the message change, and when you saw the message change, we have a new culture. Yes, we can say, like, I do believe like the poor environmental factors and the poverty do have a very big role to play, but the culture creates the mindset. The culture actually creates the mindset, and there are other places around the world who have way more poverty, wars, and everything, but they don't have this problem that we're having here, youth violence and knife crime. And that's because they have a whole other way of thinking. The way of thinking that's been implemented in that part of the world is very different to what's being implemented in, I'd say, the western part of the world. So I think culture and the arts has a very, very big role to play, if not the biggest.
Can I just echo one thing Queenie said earlier? It's not just about seeing people that look like you, but it's people that sound like you and have your culture as well. It's no good having tokenism on a board or a high thing because somebody can sound like a European or sound like everything else that is there. You can't just have someone that looks good on the board. Actually, you want to have that culture on that board as well. And that's where you're saying about things about the banks and stuff like that. It's not just saying, well, there's someone that looks like me there, but now he wears a suit and a tie and he's still going to follow the same rules. Actually, it's that culture. Integrating that culture in makes Britain a stronger place.
Ollie?
I can't even top that out, man. I mean,
Radio 4.
going back to culture, we have role models that don't get any light shine on them at all. And, you know, there's a few newspapers that I've spoken to before, and there's been some ideas about, you know, having columns where young people can sort of deliver much more positive messages and talk about, you know, different role models that we have within our community. But it comes down to many of these media platforms complaining and saying, oh, this won't make any money. But for me, with the amount of money that so much newspapers and YouTube channels and whatnot make, you should be able to sacrifice a bit to allow some of the voices of people that are doing great work within our communities to be able to have their face out there for young people to see, oh wow, this is someone else that looks like me, who's doing great things that I can now aspire to. To the second question, so in 2018, I saw my first black trustee, and for me it was weird. Like, so I was working in a charity called MAC UK, great charity, and there was a black man on the trustee panel, and for me I was just like, oh wow, like a black man, like, this is crazy, you know. Like in my head I'm thinking he must have £1 billion and you know. I spoke to him, so down to earth, regular guy, and then they sort of spoke about them wanting to embrace young people to be part of their trustees as well, and they made sure that they tailored the description so young people didn't feel, oh, I've got to be a professor or such and such before I can, you know, try to apply for a position like this. So I think it's for the organizations themselves to really try to bring on the correct young people, you know, part of the sort of leadership, the trustees sort of panel, but making sure at the same time that the advertisement around this is sort of friendly enough for them to recognize, oh, so because I've been through X, Y, and Z, or I have friends that have been through X, Y, and Z, I can actually help with the sort of strategy for the next year or so for this charity, you know? Yeah, that's me.
Can I just add, sorry, real quick, two things actually. One in regards to sort of music, because you touched on some really good points, and it reminds me that, you know, I kind of say to my young sister, what you listen to affects a lot of things, including your mood. And so I kind of set her a challenge, like, okay, I know this is the type of music you like. She's really into like grime, drill, rap, R&B, which is fine. But then when she's listening to some of the hardcore kind of drill music, she's really angry. She gets really, really angry. And so I challenged her, said, why don't you listen to this kind of music? Because she kind of tells me, oh, sis, you listen to really old kind of music and I'm not into that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but why don't you listen to this particular playlist and just come back to me. And she comes back and she's so positive, she's so different. And I'm like, you see, there's something going on here. And the second thing is mentorship.
Yeah.
I feel like people who are in these organisations and they're at the very top, they should be able to give some of their time to mentor young people and, have these conversations with them. It's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting that you just said that, because I was thinking, with music, with urban music, there's often this thing about, well, it's just reflecting my experience. I'm just using my voice to articulate what's around me. And, we often talk about, does the media reflect public opinion or does it set the agenda? And that is, what I don't know. Go on.
So, when you hear artists saying they're just reflecting their lifestyle, yes, they most definitely are. Some of them are reflecting a lifestyle that they do not live and have never lived. And I would say well over 90% of musicians, rap musicians and grime artists speak about a lifestyle that they do not live or have not experienced. But so they are reflecting their lifestyle to an extent, some of them. But they are also implementing an idea. They're also selling that lifestyle. They're promoting it. They're glamorizing it. So you're selling this idea to young and vulnerable children. When we're talking about the companies, like the big corporate companies that are in control of this industry, I would say that they're not reflecting the experience, because it's not their experience. They are actually pushing the agenda. They are pushing the idea and the programming and that belief system that's causing it. I would say that, because they're not reflecting. It's not their experience to reflect. Yes, they have they put in resources into people reflecting their experiences, but they only put resources into people reflecting their experiences if those experiences are negative. When those experiences are positive, they won't put the resources into that. We know we've been in this game and tried and tested and doing this for years, so we know that's facts.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to have to wrap up in a minute, but last question from one of our studio audience, who's our National Volunteer Coordinator, Barnaby. Again, thanking an amazing panel, and a really interesting question about how can young people who don't fit into the current academic conveyor belt, so you go and you get your GCSEs and your A-level, the whole university conveyor belt thing, be empowered to thrive in a world that's heavily based on getting qualifications. So, and how can schools and careers advisors, or I'm not sure there's many left actually, how can they guide these young people? I think we've all seen it in schools, in our kids' schools. If you're not on that conveyor belt, you are basically ignored. Difficult question to answer, but any final answers on that one?
I'll let you guys go first.
I just said that I was hoping to be interrupted. Cool. In terms of schools, I talk about it from my experience, because I'm not every sort of young person. Everybody's been through different things. When I was in school, and I was from selling donuts to selling knives and drugs and everything else, I do wish they could have brought in mentors, especially those coming from a business background, because it was clear I had the financial drive, behind the stuff that I was doing. So yeah, for those that do sort of commit crimes, go on county line, so on and so forth, I do feel that having these mentors, with these businesses and all these different things, they can really sort of keep a lot of these young people on track, for them to think about the bigger picture, to get the huge amount of bucks. There was a second bit to the question that I've forgotten. Actually.
It was about the academic conveyor belt and how schools and careers advisors or mentors can actually, how can we get round this one?
So, now we're seeing a lot of young people that are just on this vibe, which is by any means necessary, which I love. I love it till it gets to a point where, you know what I'm talking about. And so now we're seeing a lot of kids just becoming YouTube stars, shooting music videos. They're not even going to school. They're literally learning on YouTube, getting a camera, and before you know it, they're getting people paying them about £700 a music video. This do-it-yourself attitude is really going on. So I think for me, this is used all the time, but putting much more apprenticeships out there, different sort of skills that we can see these kids are picking up from the age of 14. If some of these kids could know you could be a social media assistant at YouTube or Google, you know, just from the way you handle your Snapchat and Twitter and Instagram, they'll be thinking, okay, sick, you know, I already know what I'm doing. I know how to do guerrilla marketing from all these dancing skills that are coming out. So I'll be more than happy to go on this sort of apprenticeship or work experience to develop much more if the academic side of things is not my thing right now.
Any other? Go on.
Yeah, I think the problem is metrics and value. And what I mean by that is when you started measuring school success and individual success by a metric, then you teach to a test, and that test defines what is success and what isn't. And that simply, human beings don't fit into metrics readily. And value, you know, I have an unnecessary number of letters after my name. That gives me value in society. It shouldn't. Because what should give you value in society is whom you are and what you have to contribute to society. But the fact that an equally talented and capable person running a business, who's probably just as bright, if not a lot brighter than I am, and a lot more capable, a lot more able to think outside the box, doesn't have letters after their name, will mean that they are valued less. And so the solution to this is in terms of what we do in society. And the richer the society and the less poverty you have. So I look back to my parents' experience growing up in India and coming across to the UK, is that they were forced by poverty to get qualifications. It was the only way of getting a stable income and a stable job. But once they have that stable income and stable job, a couple of generations later, when they're no longer in poverty, then arts, literature, other valuable things to society that value and enrich the human experience become equally valued. But at the moment, in the bits of society that we're talking about today, people are just struggling to survive, and that means that they're not getting that value. And the metrics mean that if they don't hit the metrics in their schools, then they're left behind, and that's a problem.
I was just going to add on to Olu in saying that we should be empowering people with lived experiences to continue to share their truth, because I think, well, what I found is a lot of people who have these lived experience that have gone through certain things, that have been through the system, or they didn't complete their education like straight through, but then, you know, they find some kind of glory in the sense that they make it and they become someone in life, and then when they come into like an auditorium or a room with young people, rather than saying that, you know, this was how it was and this is how hard it was, they kind of make it seem like, oh yeah, I'm here now and everything is perfect and you can be perfect too. But young people are not really seeing the struggle that they had to go through, and they need to kind of be honest with it, because there's no shame. Like, you know, a lot of people have come to me saying, oh my god, you're doing so amazing things, blah blah, you're so lucky. And I'm just like, well, actually, I'm not. You've no idea what I've been through. And if you want to know, come and have a sit down with me, and I'll tell you. I've been through the system. I've been through care. I've had no parents around me. But the very fact is, I've been able to, you know, learn from my mentors or learn from people who actually care, that are in this community, and just hear from them. But just continue to tell young people the truth is what will also empower them to strive.
Chantal?
Yeah, I think as well, like, schools are so great, and obviously a big problem as well is that they're so underfunded at the moment. But I think, like you mentioned, that there is such an academic agenda, and that is also from, like, the teachers are under so much stress as well to be able to meet these targets in their own school, and that's definitely been portrayed onto students. Like, we've just come like relatively out of school, and you can feel that pressure, but it's increasing. It's always increasing. But I think in some ways it's the schools and the teachers because obviously they have so much pressure already, but it's recognising that actually we still need to recognise young people for, like you said, who they are, the wider stuff outside of academics, because there is so much more a young person can give. And equally then in the wider like jobs and society that follows that, we need to value those other qualities, because like I think even on one level with going into medicine, there are so many people that I know who haven't got in just because they've missed that one exam. And actually they're great people. They've got the more arguably more important doctor and people skills, but we're graded and we're ranked against each other, and therefore just miss out, which isn't fair. Like we need to look at the wider picture around that and have the support in place so young people who are faced with that barrier can still go beyond that and then thrive.
Last answer from Simeon.
Right, so I want to be a bit different, yeah. So I'm gonna say, yeah, like the way I've developed my way of thinking won't allow me to believe that statement to be true, that there are some young people that don't fit or cannot fit into the educational pipeline or structures. Because for me, if a young person is showing that, really it's just because they don't have an awareness or the belief that they can do it. So for me, I think even just thinking that way is the wrong way to see this issue. It's not. There's always another way to see something. You can see the same thing from 100 perceptions, and it's the perception that you see that's to get the best outcome for me. So for me, it's like, why if there's a young person that we say can't fit into the educational, why? Let's look at and how we can, because you can do whatever you want. So why does this young person believe that they don't fit into the they need to believe that, they need to believe what I believe. I believe there isn't nothing that I can't do. I've learned to do so many different things because I've needed to get a job done, and because I can't pay no one to do the job, I go away and learn to do it. Now, it's because I have gained that belief within myself that, I can learn anything. If I need to do it, I've got to get the job done. Like, I would do things by any means necessary. I'll go and learn it. Now, because I have that way of thinking, I don't believe there's nothing that I couldn't learn to do, or there's no environment that I couldn't put myself in and adapt to. So we need to stop looking at things like that, because a young person needs to have that belief that, you can do. There isn't nothing in this world that you can't do. Nothing. As long as it doesn't bring harm or stress to anyone else and their property. But other than that, you can do anything, and that's the kind of, we shouldn't even be talking like that in terms of what if they can't fit into. No, there's no what if you can't. Like, it's how can we, if you're struggling to do that, how do we enable you to do so? Do you know?
Okay, so anyone out there who has any access to content, journalists, anyone who's listening, anyone knows anyone, you've got to get these people in a place where they can do some more influencing, because that was absolutely fantastic, brilliant. Thank you all so much. And thank you very much for tuning in and for the questions as well. And that's it.